For many years, faith may simply feel like something we inherit. We grow up hearing about God in church, and we learn Bible stories. We learn what we are supposed to believe. But until life brings us to the place where we desperately need God, faith can remain mostly intellectual. It lives in the mind more than in the heart. But there are seasons in life that change that. Moments like when you lose your child and the ground beneath your life shifts so dramatically that the idea you once held about God suddenly feel too small to hold the weight of your pain and your questions and your searching. And for many people, that moment arrives through suffering and through grief, through loss, and through circumstances that strip away every illusion of control. It's in those moments that faith often stops being something theoretical and becomes something tangible, something real. You begin to notice things you may have overlooked before, a quiet sense of peace that arrives when logic says you should be falling apart, a small whisper of hope in the middle of a dark night of the soul after the loss of your child, the presence of God that does not always remove the pain, but somehow steadies you inside of it. These are the kinds of moments that begin to transform faith from something we were told about into something that we begin to experience for ourselves. Many people expect faith to show up in dramatic ways, but more often, tangible faith shows up in the quiet ways, in the strength to get out of bed on a day when grief feels unbearable, in the courage to keep breathing when your heart feels shattered, in the unexpected moments when you realize somehow, even in the middle of the hardest chapter of your life, you are not completely alone, not explaining everything, not fixing everything. And faith becomes tangible when you begin to recognize that something greater than yourself is walking with you through the valley, but staying. And sometimes the most powerful evidence of faith is not that God removes the storm, it's that His presence becomes real enough to carry you through it. And one of the most misunderstood aspects of faith is how quietly God often moves. Many people expect God to reveal Himself through dramatic miracles or unmistakable signs. And sometimes those things do happen. But more often, the most tangible experiences of faith appear in subtle, deeply personal ways. They show up in moments that might seem ordinary to someone else, but feel profoundly meaningful to the person experiencing them. And for example, there are moments in life when you find yourself facing something you never imagined you could survive, like the loss of your child, a diagnosis that changes everything, a life situation that feels completely overwhelming, and yet somehow in the middle of it, you begin to notice small moments that feel almost like quiet fingerprints of God. A scripture that appears at the exact moment you needed it. A stranger who says something that speaks directly into the struggle you've been carrying silently. A sense of peace that settles over your heart during prayer when nothing around you has actually changed. These moments do not erase pain, but they remind you that God has not abandoned you inside it. And faith becomes tangible when you begin to recognize these moments as more than coincidence. They begin to form a pattern, a quiet reassurance that even when life feels chaotic and uncertain, there is a deeper presence still at work. And many people who have walked through deep suffering will tell you something surprising. They experienced God more clearly in their hardest seasons than they ever did in their comfortable ones. not because suffering is good, but because suffering removes many of the distractions that normally fill our lives. And when everything else falls away, the soul begins searching for something real enough to hold on to. And often it is in that searching that people begin to notice God in ways they never had before. Not always in loud ways, but in steady ones. And faith becomes tangible when you realize that God's presence does not always shout, and sometimes it just gently stays. And there are seasons in life when strength simply runs out, and times when no amount of personal determination, positive thinking, or emotional resilience feels strong enough to carry you through what you're facing. And for many people, this is the moment when faith becomes something deeply tangible, because there are experiences in life that force us to confront the limits of our own strength. And grief is one of those experiences. And when you lose someone deeply connected to your heart, it can feel as though the entire structure of your life has collapsed. The future you imagined disappears overnight, leaving behind questions that have no easy answers. And in those moments, many people feel as though they are barely surviving from one day to the next, and yet something strange often happens in the middle of that darkness. You discover that even when you feel completely empty, you're still somehow being sustained. You wake up the next morning and you take another breath and you move through another day that once felt impossible. And this does not mean the pain is gone, but it reveals something powerful. And faith is not always about feeling strong. Sometimes faith is about being carried when you're not strong enough to carry yourself. Many people describe experiencing moments during grief where they felt an unexplained sense of comfort, protection, and a presence during the darkest nights of their lives. A moment where prayer felt less like words and more like a silent reaching. And somehow, in that reaching, they sensed that they were not alone. And this is one of the most tangible expressions of faith, not the absence of pain, but the presence of God within it. And faith becomes real when you realize that even when you cannot hold on to God with confidence, God is still holding on to you. And sometimes that quiet truth is the very thing that carries a broken heart through what seemed impossible to survive. And if you're trying to find God in your grief, please know you're not alone. And healing from grief takes time. And sometimes it helps to hear from others who understand this journey. And if this message spoke to your heart, I've created other videos that may bring comfort and encouragement as you walk through grief. You can watch those videos at the link below. And if these messages help your heart even a little, I would love for you to subscribe so we can continue walking this grief journey together. And with love always, Angela and Logan.